The idea of democracy in America has always already been bankrupt. Like I said in my last video, everything that Black people benefit from in America, we fought for it in spite of democracy. But we have to fight for it. The liberation that happened for the Constitution was one that was exclusionary, based off of white men thinking about land and thinking about people that don't have land not having it, showing that the framers of the Constitution wasn't even loyal to their fellow white men. How can we say democracy is something that we should be claiming still? I would argue that, to me, the reclamation of democracy, a lot of folks trying to reclaim democracy, and democracy ain't never claimed your ass. A lot of y'all trying to protect democracy ain't never protected you. White folks in America, particularly white men in America, believe that the Greeks were the top level of development, of the highest development of government, and that we can't come with nothing outside of what they have for us. So we can point out how smart, innovative we are. It don't matter though. We are only limited to the government ideas that white folks made. That's my beef.
Democracy is not a conscious entity. It's a tool.
But nothing in the world operates in the abstract. Y'all know what I think about democracy based off of the last live stream that I have. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. But I'm sure those arguments will come out right here, man. Without further ado, though, introducing to y'all Eric, and you know what I'm saying. I'll let Eric give him a quick little, little shindig of who you are, and then get straight into your parts about your arguments about democracy, and more specifically, what were the things that I said that you disagree with, and then what you have to put up there. And I'm gonna cut you off at all. I think it's important to let you know what I'm saying. Let me hear your argument.
Well, first of all, Mr. Lee, it's nice to meet you. I really appreciate you having a platform where you talk about democracy, regardless of how anybody feels about it. I think this is an important discussion to have. And so thank you very much. Thank you for having me come on and for entertaining this conversation. I think it's important. And so my name is Eric, and I have a master's and a bachelor's degree in history from Arkansas State University. And I'm not expert in democracy. I'm not a historian of democracy. I'm more of a social historian. My personal research is about U.S. colonialism in the Philippines, particularly how Filipinos were represented in colonial propaganda and the exploits of a U.S. veterans organization that paraded around the country's largest cities in Filipino blackface from 1904 to 1974. And so this is my thesis has just been published in January, and so let's kind of give you an idea of what I'm writing about, what I'm thinking about. And so, Mr. Lee, you popped up in my feed. I had never seen any of your videos before, and you made some very, very provocative arguments about democracy and what you think about it. And so I thought it would be good for anybody that cares about the issue that we kind of talk about what democracy is first, and then we can have that nuanced conversation about, how it's applied, which I think are two different things inherently, as we talked about. And so I want to start off by kind of thinking about how we can orient our conversation in the timeline, right? Because right now, next year, we're 250 years in the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So that's a big milestone. We are 80 years right now away from the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Next year is going to be the 25th anniversary of 9/11, so it's a good time to ask us what we learned from that. And of course, we are here just having passed 1 year since the presidential assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life in Pennsylvania. And so the thing that I noticed is that the United States, it seems to be in crisis, and a lot of these important anniversaries of democracy. A good example is like a week before July 4th, 1876, the United States Army suffered this iconic loss at Battle of Little Bighorn with what we call Custer's Last Stand. Here we are fighting Native Americans right a weekend before we celebrated the centennial of this great gift that was betrothed to us from the framers, at least to that generation. That's what they were thinking. So what I thought I would do is I would talk about some of the literature that has kind of informed my opinions, just some academic works. We've got Pericles of Athens and the Birth of Democracy. This is David Kagan. This is a classic. This one is on free press right now. I don't know if that's visible. This one was written in like 1991 or published in 1991. So it was really oriented towards like these former Soviet states. They were supposed to be fledgling democracy. And it's a really good how-to manual as far as talking about the virtues of having a good leader and things of that nature. It's a very good book. We have Mitchell's Democracy Beginning, Democracy's Beginning, the Athenian Story. This is on Yale. And it's a good companion book to Kagan's work. We've got this big tome. You see how thick it is? James T. Falkenberg's Toward Democracy, The Struggle for Self-Rule in European and American Thought. And he has some very good ideas in here. This is published in 2016. We have Evans's The Coming of the Third Reich. This is on Penguin Press. And this has a lot to do about these cracks in democracy that occurred under Weimar and some of the things that were, this Weimar Republic is kind of a case study. It's just kind of something to throw out there. This one is one that I really like. It's Volk's Moral Minorities and the Makings of American Democracy. This has a lot of very interesting stuff in here that pertains to my research and pertains to this conversation. And lastly, and certainly not least, we have Stephen Hahn's A Nation Under Our Feet. Black political struggles in the rural South from slavery to the Great Migration. So this has a lot to do with kinship networks and autonomy and stuff like that. And so this is sort of the literature that I drew from when I was thinking about this, because it's, you know, whether or not one is a student, we still are affected by everything. And, you know, we're faced in unprecedented times where, you know, we have to ask ourselves, do we have to act? You know, do we have to go out there and march, or more than that? You know, and if we were analyzing any other country right now, we would be thinking, well, right now we've certainly got this society over here that we're looking at. It's got these two factions that are horribly divided, and one of them is making a lot of moves. And it looks like if they don't meet any kind of resistance, then this other faction is going to take over. Okay, and so, you know, then in the midst of that, I see this video that's saying, hey, should we bother to reclaim democracy? And sir, you got my attention, you know, because this is something that,
man, democracy ain't ever claimed me. Democracy ain't ever claimed us. You feel me? Democracy claimed cis body white men. You feel me? That's who democracy I feel like claims, man. The ideas of democracy, it all comes from this this identity of the Greeks and Athenians, you feel me, being able to talk about how can we get power away from the aristocrats. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get that. You know what I mean? To me, the distinction becomes from how do we get to this idea of freedom and humanity with this tool of democracy, while acknowledging that freedom and humanity has been messed up by democracy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, it's like the very things democracy is supposed to preserve, the very things that democracy is supposed to be able to justify we get, is the very things that I think that democracy obliterates.
Okay. Well, I came and prepared to talk about some, you know, what democracy is, right? Because I think that, like you said in the previous video, you said, like, you know, when if democracy resulted in Trump, or democracy results in this very corrupt leader, is this a model? Is this a viable model that we want to use going forward? And that's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think, like, before we can really have that question about like some sort of a new form of government, I think we really need to sit there and evaluate, you know, what democracy is and how it works, or how it's supposed to work, and the components that have to be maintained in order for this thing to work.
Yeah,
And
go
so
and bust
there
this
are,
components out. Go and bust. I've been dying to hear these components you're finna give me.
okay, and these are really in no particular order, but I think these are all very important to consider. I mean, like, first and foremost, I think people have to have loyalty to the principles of the Constitution. Okay, like this idea of equal protection under the law. Like, if it hasn't been applied, we need to demand that it's applied. You know, I like to live in a country where I can criticize my government and not risk going to jail. We can have conversations like this and not face any type of repercussions for it. And so people have to decide, okay, is this a type of government that we want to have? Because if we don't agree that the Constitution is suitable for us in this particular moment, then we're going to lose it, and we might as well call the country something else, because there won't be any semblance left. Okay, and so Another one of these components is that you have to have deliberations. You have to discuss how legislation is crafted, who it affects, and this is all kind of just basic stuff that you hear about democracy, right? Pluralism, this concept of one of the most important components, multiculturalism, pluralism, popular sovereignty, these ideas, I think they're very important. Uh, Autonomy, equality, freedom of expression. I mean, all of these things are what we understand to be, you know, uh, some of these things are institutions, and some of these things are values and processes, and one of which, is like free and fair elections. We have to have free and fair elections, and we have to have, like you, Mr. Lee, we have to have a free and honest press that educates the citizenry in the maintenance of their democracy. And that's a critical component that we're lacking currently. We have to have, of course, checks and balances, and we have to have a justice system that is fair and equitable for everybody. So when we get back to what I mean, like when we say this loyalty to the principles of the Constitution, we have to quantify what those principles are
I'm about to ask you too.
and who they,
Don't give
and
me
who
too.
they apply to. And they better apply to everybody or they're not going to work. I don't want to stand for that. I'm tired of living in a world where I witness inequality and all this kind of stuff every day. And and it's time that we do something about it, right? And Kloppenberg writes about this ethic of reciprocity. It's also kind of important. Um, what we have is this ethic of reciprocity, and in our country, when we have power that shifts back and forth, the majority becomes the minority. Then what we have to have is we have to have a majority that protects the rights of the minority. And then when the minority comes back in power, then they're supposed to let the new minority is supposed to let the majority govern. Okay, and we have to have these things. I don't know if there's something going on with the sound. I can't hear you.
Nah. I'm just making. I'm just. I ain't saying that. I'm just like.
Okay, okay. We have to have these things in order for democracy to work, and we don't have a lot of these. So this is why I say that rather than framing the conversation about should democracy be reclaimed, I think it's something that has to be maintained, and that we all have to feel like we all have a stake in order for to make this thing work, right?
But I
And
think
most important,
that's where about you finish. Let you finish.
there's another aspect, and that's academic freedom. And I come from a history department, and so and last night it occurred to me that academic freedom is not necessarily about the freedom to have an honest and principled dialogue about our society, but it also is about being able to research cures for diseases and climate science and inventing things that can change our life. All of these kind of fall under the umbrella of academic freedom, but unfortunately we don't have a media that's really talking about academic freedom for the most part. And so, another component is the infrastructure. We have to have infrastructure in place for people to go to their places of employment, participate in the economy, disseminate information, especially as it applies to their freedom of expression and freedom of movement and these things. Um, we have to have a high quality standard of education in this country to have an educated, informed, and engaged populace. Okay. And then what these scholars argue, and I think it was Mitchell, is in the absence of some of these things or all of these things, like we have in our current system, we need a, a profoundly great leader who is able to make crucial decisions at very important moments in time. Like JFK, for example, when during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev sent him a very aggressive telegram, and it was very warlike and very posturing, and everybody in his cabinet was upset about it and wanted him to respond. And a few minutes later, another one comes in and it's diplomatic. And Kennedy decides to respond to the diplomatic one, and thus, at least in that time, we averted a crisis. And so that's what I think. This, making good leaders and making crucial decisions at crucial times. And 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 these scholars, they argue that when we look back and we look back at Athens and we think about it being, the foundation of our language, of Western civilization and culture, that they ascribe the greatness that we ascribe to that, like the art and the sculpture, Greek philosophy, mathematics, all of that. It was because of democracy, not in spite of it. And last time you mentioned that, and I can feel you a lot on this when you mentioned, like, you're coming from a position of nihilism, pessimism, and I feel the same way because I'm a well-seasoned cynic. And here I am trying to advocate that people get up and march and fight for their democracy, when at the same time I wonder if it's even worth it because of the way that the situation is going on right now. And just this morning, Francisca Albanese said today, she's the UN Special Rapporteur. She's one of the loudest and most brilliant voices on Gaza. She said, "Hope is a discipline." Okay, so maybe that's something. I like to hope that things are going to get better, but I don't know. My life experience teaches me a little different sometimes. And so that being said, I think, like, democracy is something that we should all view as sacrosanct. This idea that we can that we can go out and speak our minds and protest and be free, like, and the things that they told us when we were children, that's being threatened right now. And so
I'm ready to
I
respond.
guess that's, I mean, like, yeah, I say I'm curious, to your questions and comments and stuff like that.
To me, like, my response would be like, when you talk about loyalty or deliberation or infrastructure, those things aren't cornered by the market of democracy. I think that loyalty and deliberation and infrastructure are things that we can find present that exist outside of a democratic structure. And I think that that idea is what it allows for us to view democracy as being a thing that we always have to reform, regardless of how bad democracy has been, regardless of how, I'm saying, it's always that democracy is something to be reformed. To me, thinking about it, you said the first thing you said that the components of democracy is having loyalty to the Constitution. The framers of the Constitution had no loyalty to the people. The framers of the Constitution had no loyalty to the Constitution itself. We understand that when it comes to deliberation, the Constitution literally was created with no deliberation. We know that deliberation, to me, is being able to account for multiplicity of voices that allows for us to create dialogue. The deliberation that happened for the Constitution was one that was exclusionary, based off of white men thinking about land and thinking about people that don't have land not having it, showing that the framers of the Constitution wasn't even loyal to their fellow white man. They had to have land. So to me, it's showing that the idea of democracy in America has always already been bankrupt. Like I said in my last video, everything that Black people benefit from in America, we fought for it in spite of democracy. Whether I'm talking about my ability to be in the classroom, my ability to vote, my ability to get housing, my ability to drink water, all of these things is stuff that democracy is supposed to give me up jump. But we have to fight for it. So in 250 years, we can show that everything you said democracy is supposed to have, we can identify really ain't never had it. For instance, we know that the Greeks, their idea of democracy was a direct democracy. The people directly voted for laws. The framers of America, they believed in mobocracy. They believed that the indigenous people were so stupid and dumb that we have to have a representative democracy. So it shows you how many times in American history has a president won the election and he lost the popular vote. Many a times, showing you that the concept of popular sovereignty is also one that's bankrupt. It's a concept that's very cool and sexy in the abstract, but nothing in the world operates in the abstract. Nothing in the world operates in the abstract. So again, think about it in terms of pluralism. In America, every time a group has come up with multicultural pluralism, it is seen as a direct threat to the American government. Whether we're talking about the Black Panther Party and Fred Hampton, whether we're talking about, this hippie group, that hippie group, every time we've had a movement that's trying to substantiate a multicultural movement, it's always seen as a threat to democracy. You feel what I'm saying? Now, get here, fair elections, right? Fair elections. I know that the Electoral College historically came about because of slavery and trying to account for the 3/5 of people, right? That is how we get the Electoral College. The Electoral College in America is a cornerstone of democracy. We don't get the Electoral College without thinking about how chattel slavery, the captivity of African people, brought about this tool. Now, you and I in our conversation, we talked about how America has been around for 250 years. And what I told you was that You're going to sound like a domestic violence victim talking about how though they've been getting their butt kicked by their spouse for 250 years, year 251 might be good. So we can have hope. We can have hope that our abuser that showed us they have a relationship of abusing, they can be better. Or come up to me as the Christians that say that about, hey man, anything Christians do should not never be seen as a reflection on Christianity because God and man are two different things. As if our ideas about God don't come from man. As if our ideas of Christianity or ideas of democracy don't come from somebody. So let's go back to the history, right? We know that historically speaking, all of our concepts of democracy come from the Greeks. One has to ask themselves, what is the relationship that America has to the Greeks that make it where they always already think that the values that come from them is best thanks to sliced bread? Well, a lot of Western world, a lot of Western Europeans believe they are rightful heirs of the Greeks, or rightful heirs of the Romans. And as a result, they believe that whatever those white folks came up in the Greeks is the limitation of human society when it comes to government. Hey, listen. The Greeks might have been on the world 2,000 years ago. For some reason, though, white folks in America, particularly white men in America, believe that the Greeks were the top level of development, of the highest development of government, and that we can't come up with nothing outside of what they have for us. So we can point out how smart, innovative we are. It don't matter, though. We are only limited to the government ideas that white folks made. That's my beef. We have 250 years of democracy in America that's always been able to justify denying humanity, always been able to justify death, always been able to justify instability or being able to invade a country or being able to stay about. How can we say democracy is something that we should be claiming still? I would argue that, to me, the reclamation of democracy, a lot of folks trying to reclaim democracy, and democracy ain't never claimed your ass. A lot of y'all trying to protect democracy ain't never protected you. So I'm still thinking. So in America, we have a representative democracy, meaning that even the abstract idea of democracy, American framers didn't agree with. As a matter of fact, in the abstract, democracy was seen as being able to directly vote for a law. That abstract idea was so fearful to the founding fathers of America, they said, we can't have that. And they came and created complete concepts to demonize it. Mobocracy. You feel me? So let's get into this idea of democracy being able to apply to everybody. I would argue that democracy is based in exclusion. The reason why the Athens and the Greeks wanted to have democracy is because they wanted to expand their empire. We're going to expand our empire by denying humanity to other people, or expand our empire by denying citizenship to other people. Get down, lay down. When they teach us that all roads lead to Rome, I understand that the Greeks and Romans, two different things, but we understand how they tie together in history, right? What I would argue is that everything that comes from these two civilizations, the European descendants of these individuals believe their ancestors had the answers to the world for the next 200,000 years, and that whatever they create, we could always make it better. And even if you can identify, democracy might have justified a little slavery, we can make it better though. Yeah, democracy might have killed a couple of Native Americans, we can make it better though. Every time we point out how democracy is bad, they're going to be able to talk about, but we can make it better. We can reform it. Or you'll say like, he might say, your mind made up that you think democracy is bad. I think I would flip it. Your mind made up that democracy is always reformable. Your mind is made up that you believe that this state of government is the best type of government we can have. I believe we're smart enough to come up with a new innovative government economies that's not limited to what's happened in history.